Okay, so today we are going to be working on converting decimals to percentages. Now, if you watched my last video, I mentioned that this is a bit of a tricky concept to get your head around. Sort of, hey everyone. So today we are now going to be dealing with changing decimals to percentages. And this is a little bit of a tricky concept, but I'm hoping the video will give you a bit of intuition about the conversion and why we why it works in the way we're converting this fraction. So I'm going to first converting this decimal, I should say. So I'm going to first give you one decimal. So this is 0.95. Now, before we even move on, I'm going to quickly write, and you'll see why in a minute, but I'm going to write my criteria for a percentage. So just writing some things that we need in order to have a percentage. So one right off the bat that we can think of is, well, we need some fraction over 100, where 100 is our denominator. So, all right, that's one bit of criteria. And that also implies that, well, there's going to be some type of conversion that happens between this number. This will have to become a fraction before it becomes a percentage, because a percentage is a type of fraction. Now, also, when converting, we don't want to actually change our original number. So that may seem a little bit redundant as I say it, but you'll see why in a minute why that makes sense and why that's important to explicitly define. So because decimals, fractions, and percentages are all equivalent things, the number's value can't change. It needs to remain intact. We're just trying to represent it in a different way. So I'm going to write here that the number's value, so in this case from 0.95, can't change. Okay, cool. Sorry for the messy handwriting as well. I'm only just looking now and that looks a bit shocking. But let's have a look now. So I give you this decimal, 0.95. And we want to do something to it, perform something on it, which is going to produce a percentage or a fraction over 100. So that's going to actually be, I'm going to write something over 100. Cool. Okay. Now, we need two bits of the puzzle. We need to satisfy these two conditions we've laid out up here. And that will hopefully give us some intuition into how we can manipulate this number into a fraction over 100. So, well, first of all, so this number doesn't change, there is only one number we can multiply it by for it to not change its value at all. And take a moment to think what this could be. Feel free to pause the video. But the only number we can multiply 0.95 by to get 0.95 by is by 1. Because 0.95 multiplied by 1 will produce the same number. So that is the only way we can tick off the second point from our criteria. So I'm going to write here, to satisfy criteria, point 2. Cool. So this has to be some kind of multiplication by 1, right? Because that's the only thing that'll produce the same number. So let's look at the first criteria point. So to get this number here as a percentage, it needs to be some fraction over 100. So we will need to multiply it by something over 100. And we'll write to satisfy criteria point 1. Let's see if I can copy this. I can't. That's okay. And I'll just write in these little things, these quote marks, to see that we mean to satisfy criteria point 1. And what is the only number that we can have on our numerator to have the same effect as multiplying by 1? Now, some of you may have caught on already, but for those of you that haven't, the only number we can multiply, or the only number we can have on the numerator here to make this 1 is 100, because any number divided by itself gives us 1. So let's actually see what happens here, because this will give us, when we multiply our quantity here by a fraction, well, this will multiply with the numerator, so we'll get 0.95 times 100 over 100. And multiplying 0.95 by 100, you can use your calculator, but we can also see that every time we multiply by 10, we move our decimal point along. And because we're multiplying by 100, we'll be moving our decimal point along 2 places. So we will end up with 95 over 100. And check it out. We have a fraction with some number over 100, which is our decimal form. Well, that's the fraction form we need to show a decimal. And to show a percentage, sorry. This is the fraction form in which we can represent a percentage. So we get 95%. So I know I waffled on a little bit with all of this, but that is to give you some of the intuition behind converting between decimals to percentages. Because we need to get this to the form of something over 100, we need to multiply our number by something over 100. But in doing that, we can't change the value of this number, because a percentage is just an equivalent representation. It's still showing the same quantity, just in a different way. So we can't change this number 0.95. And the only way we can't change it by carrying out a multiplication is multiplying by 1. So in essence here, we're just multiplying by 1, but we're doing some mathematical gymnastics to express 1 as 100 over 100. And the reason we do this is to get 100 on the denominator here. Now, let's do one more example, just so you can see that the pattern kind of continues. But say we wanted to convert 0.257, this decimal, to a percentage. So what we do, once again, we want to express this as a fraction of 100. So we'll have 100 on our denominator, and on our numerator, the only number we can put there that won't change the value of this one is 100, because 100 over 100 is equivalent to multiplying by 1. So we will get left with 0.257 times 100 over 100. And then carrying out this multiplication in the numerator, we'll get 25.7 over 100 in the fraction form required to show a percentage, which gives us 25.7%. Now, I know I said a lot in this video, and hopefully you're still with me, but the essence of converting decimals to percentages that I've pushed so much here is the idea that we need to satisfy two bits of criteria. We need to not change this number, 0.95, and we also want a fraction over 100. So everything I've done here has this criteria in mind when solving. And that is how we can convert from decimals to percentages. I'll see you guys next time.